Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Please like and subscribe. Aston Villa have made a move for Bayer Leverkusen forward Moussa Diaby, according to media reports. Today, I'm joined by Max Merrill, who is a German football expert and broadcaster. So, Max, who is Moussa Diaby and what could he potentially bring to Aston Villa?
Well, he's another pacey Leverkusen winger who Aston Villa have got their eye on. Obviously, Leon Bailey joined not too long ago. And I mean, when I say pacey, absolutely electric. One of the fastest players in the Bundesliga, and for me, just a wonderful example of a winger who's kind of reminiscent of the wingers of the past, as well as the sort of modern game winger, able to cut inside or play on the left side with his stronger left foot, and a goal threat, and also someone who can provide assists. So a player that I think is well suited to the type of game that we see in the Premier League, the fast-paced, high pressing sort of football that we see from a lot of teams in the Premier League now. And Moussa Diaby is a wonderful player, and I think a lot of clubs should be looking at him. A lot of clubs, even Champions League clubs should be looking at him because he's a goal threat, and also has a good amount of intelligence, in terms of spatial awareness, in terms of his role, tracking back as well. I think one of the standout players of the Bundesliga in the last few seasons.
Okay, well, so that's a high praise indeed. You mentioned his pace there at first. What are his main strengths, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of players, especially wingers, who are athletic and who have a lot of pace, but he also has a lot of skill on the ball. He's a very direct player, and not afraid to take players on in the dribble, not afraid to take an early shot, also from outside of the box. He gets into really good positions as well, and I think Leverkusen have been a side who've excelled at counter-attacking in the past few seasons. Then under Xabi Alonso, who took over this past season during the campaign, they adapted a little bit, and he's also shown himself a valuable asset in more possession-based football. But I think especially on the counter, he's the type of player who can really drive at defenses, who was not afraid to take a player on, to take a gamble. And he's worked really well this past season with Frimpong, the fullback, who's another player who's being linked with Premier League clubs. And I think, you in him, you get a player who's got that raw athleticism and pace, but also has intelligence and skill on the ball. And I think it's something that, a lot of players have either or, and he combines both of them.
Okay, and Unai Emery, the Villa manager, he likes a player who's versatile, likes players shifting different roles. Now Villa kind of play a hybrid 4-4-2, I would say, 4-2-3-1. So where would you say that Diaby would most likely fit in Villa's system? Can he play kind of on either wing? Can he play off a striker? And indeed, can he play as a striker itself?
He has actually played as a striker in spurts this season. Leverkusen had a couple of injury problems, notably with Patrick Schick, who's their sort of main go-to striker. I don't think it's his strongest position by any means. I mean, I think if you're playing in a 4-4-2, you could explore him being sort of the second striker with perhaps a more classic number 9 in that role. But when he's been at his best for Leverkusen is on either wing, especially on the right-hand side, because he can cut in on his left foot. But I think either wing, he's a really valuable player and a dangerous player. Leverkusen have played with 3 at the back at times, and so when he's featured in a striker role, it's been in those kind of systems like a 3-5-2, together with someone like Patrick Schick, who's a tall centre forward and more of a classic sense. So I think if you do want to see him in a strike partnership, you want him to be that sort of Michael Owen to the Heskey sort of player. But really his key area of the pitch where he's dangerous is out on the wing, driving at defenses, counter-attacking, and just making use of that pace and that ball control.
Okay, now Villa did sign him. He wouldn't be the first Leverkusen winger that Villa have taken. 2 years ago, Leon Bailey for around £30 million. How comparable are Diaby and Bailey as players?
I think Diaby is better. I think Bailey showed really early promise at Leverkusen, and when we spoke back before he signed for Villa, one thing that for me was a question mark is how consistent can he be, and how high is his work rate when he wants to. He's got fantastic work rate and stamina. I think Diaby is more of a classic winger, I think he's more dangerous. He's more of a goal threat. I mean, last season in the Bundesliga, he scored 9 goals and also chipped in with 9 assists. I think the previous campaign, he even scored 13 goals in the league. So he's a bit more of a goal threat, and I think a bit more of a classic winger in the sense of someone who will take players on, who will burst past players. I think he is the better player, and I think there's certainly interest from Villa, and I think he'd be interested to play in the Premier League. However, I could see him and his agents thinking maybe we wait for that Champions League club. Leverkusen have qualified for the Europa League this season. Last season they were in the Champions League, and I think he sees himself at that level. So the question is a bit: does he think, all right, I'll take that move to the Premier League, or will he wait to see if someone comes in who's already a Champions League side who gives him that opportunity to play at the very highest level in Europe?
Okay, and I think one criticism we've had of Leon Bailey while he's been at Villa has been his consistency. Now, Diaby, does he have the same problems at all? I mean, I know wingers can have a tendency to be a bit like that, but is he basically a more consistent player than Bailey, do you think?
I would say so, yes. I would say so in terms of his goal contributions and just in terms of like giving a consistent level of performance. He doesn't have that issue. He's an ambitious player. He came from PSG. He went, he was, I think he joined PSG when he was, really young kid, and went through the ranks there, had a loan spell in Italy, and then just saw that he's not going to get that opportunity. And he came to Leverkusen and he really just, took his opportunity by the scruff of the neck. And I think he's more consistent, more of a goal threat, and quite possibly also already further along as a player, as a prospect. I think he's definitely moved on from being a sort of considered a talented player, a shooting star, a youngster. He's for me a player who's knocking on the door of the French team consistently, which is difficult. It's a national team that has an embarrassment of riches in that position. But the fact that he's already knocking at that door, and I think he's a bit more of a direct player, and I'd see him a bit closer to Christopher Nkunku, maybe even. Although Nkunku, I think, excels a bit more at a central role, while Diaby's better out on the wing. But if Villa sign Diaby, I think they get a better player, a player who's already more established and confident. And that's actually a key thing for me. He's got that confidence, that swagger, and he has a tendency for the spectacular. That type of electric pace, but also paired with fantastic finishes, darting runs into space, finding that space, and combining also with a fullback or a central striker. I think he's just a tad further along and a tad more clinical compared to Leon Bailey.
Okay, and we've talked a lot about his strengths, but do you think there's anything in his game that if he came to the Premier League, you think he'd have to improve at all?
Well, he's not the tallest player. He's perhaps not the strongest player. He might get a bit bullied. Right. He'll have his welcome to the Premier League moment, like so many players do, especially players who are skillful. But I think he's experienced Champions League football. He's experienced a little bit of international football with France. So I struggle to see glaring weaknesses in his game. I think obviously you always want to be two-footed as a winger in the modern game. He's certainly stronger off of his left foot, but he's not a player where I have big question marks about an area of his game. He's also shown himself adaptable in terms of playing in a system like a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3 under various coaches. And I think Xabi Alonso unlocked another side to him in the sort of latter half of the campaign. I think you were getting a fairly well-rounded player. The question for me is, how much will that cost you?
Okay, and well, that's my next question actually. How much do you think that Leverkusen, they've been doing very well under Xabi Alonso, and I think we're probably hoping to bounce on next season. So what kind of a price do you think they'd look for to get to sell Diaby?
Yeah, I mean, his contract runs till 2025, so that's something that sort of counts a bit against Leverkusen in that sense. But if you look at the type of money that Leverkusen have got for their players, Leon Bailey obviously north of 30 million, Kai Havertz costing, I think, Chelsea, at the time, something like 80 million euros or so. Like Dortmund, they are tough negotiators and they're willing to wait it out. And they had, for instance, with players in the past like Bailey and Havertz, they said, hey, we're going to keep you for one more year unless a crazy offer comes in. And even then, we'll only say yes once we get really the money that we think we deserve. Diaby's. I think Leverkusen are somewhat resigned to losing Diaby. They certainly, the noise that I'm hearing in Germany here is that there is an expectation that substantial bids will be coming in. I would expect it has to be over 40 million. If you're Leverkusen, you'll be thinking about the 50 million mark, because, like I say, you've got a fairly finished product there. You've got a player who's shown himself to be consistent and also a consistent goal threat and provider. So I would expect us to be hearing about bids in the realm of 40 plus million.
Okay, and that'll be an Aston Villa transfer record.
Buendia, I think.
Yeah, the 38 million quid for him. So yeah, it might be going above that. But just one quick question as well is, there's been a few Bundesliga wingers who've gone to the Premier League in recent times. Jadon Sancho, who was fantastic at Dortmund but hasn't really done it at United. Leon Bailey again showed really good signs at Leverkusen and has been inconsistent so far at Villa. And then Timo Werner as well, a striker / winger who didn't have the best of times at Chelsea. So I don't really know why that is, that they've all three of them seem to have struggled for consistency in the Premier League. But do you think Diaby would stand a chance of being a player that might make the bounce more naturally than the other three did?
I mean, I think what speaks for him is that he has played in various systems and has played, like I said, Champions League football. Jadon Sancho at Dortmund was, one of the star players and was given a lot of leeway. And I think also having Haaland next to you is definitely can boost you in terms of what you look like on the football pitch as a winger. I would expect Diaby to be a little bit more suited to adapting. In terms of both Werner and Sancho, I think they played in systems in the Bundesliga that really suited their strengths. And that were a bit forgiving in terms of masking their weaknesses, especially Timo Werner, who played in this 4-2-2-2 that Leipzig play, which is a very sort of unorthodox version of a 4-4-2, where he was paired with Yusuf Poulsen, this big, bulky number 9, and sort of in the mold of the Emil Heskey to a Michael Owen sort of situation. So Diaby, he's looked comfortable, like I said, in various systems. So I think that would speak for him. Unai Emery as well, the type of coach he is, I think that would be suited to what Diaby likes as well in a coach. But yeah, there's no telling really. The step up from Bundesliga football to Premier League is present. I like to think the Bundesliga is better than people give it credit for. But you have to admit that the Premier League just has a different level in terms of mid-table teams and lower down the table as well. The amount of quality that even a club like Crystal Palace or whoever it may be that you'll be facing on an away day, the amount of quality that they have on their side, that's just obviously another level. So yeah, it makes it difficult, and it depends, what kind of setup he's in. If he's given opportunities to run into space, he will take those, and I think he will excel also in the Premier League. But on a wet and windy night in Stoke, there's no telling how Diaby will react to that.
Okay, well, it's an exciting move certainly for Aston Villa. But Max, it's been great to talk to you. It was great to chat to you about Leon Bailey as well a couple of years ago. So for those who don't know where they can find you, where can we find your work online?
Yeah, find me on Twitter or Instagram at Max Merrill, at Max Merrill _ I think it is. And always happy to talk to you about football. It's a shame that it's always about players leaving Leverkusen, a club I'm very fond of.